Good morning, well, very late morning, but welcome to another episode of Tandatula Sofa Safaris with myself, Chad. And today, this episode is going to be slightly different. I'm not going out on a drive per se. Yes, I'm driving in a car and I can see some giraffes up ahead. But what I've decided to do for this episode is to rather put together a collection of the videos that I managed to capture last week while I was driving some guests. They stayed with us for 8 nights, and I can say without a shadow of a doubt that they were just the most unbelievable 8 nights that I have experienced with the same set of guests in a 13-year guiding history. Some incredibly good sightings, but just what we saw and the rarity of what we saw made it one that I will never ever forget. South Africans very often avid safari goers, and they've come to the bush, they've seen, you know, the usual stuff, the giraffes, the zebras, lions, leopards. So when they do venture here, sorry, speaking of giraffes, there's one about to drink. The difficulty of getting down, getting that very long neck below the ground and the characteristic head flick as they finish. So, sorry, back to the guest's request. You know, the South African safari goers have seen these things. Not to say they don't enjoy seeing them, but they get a little bit more audacious with their requests. And this week was absolutely no different. When I posed the question to them, what would you like to see? It was a barrage of very rare and unlikely to see animals. A wild dog was one that I was confident that we would have a chance of seeing. Cheetahs, we'd have to be very lucky, but then the others, caracal, aardvark, pangolin and aardvark, for like, we'll try, but I honestly had no expectations of satisfying any one of those. The game viewing in the first 3 days had been so special that the guests actually decided to extend their stay by another 5 nights. And I don't think that they or Jack or myself regret it, because it was just something that will be etched in our memory for ages, forever. It was just unbelievable, as you will see. But the week started out on one of my most incredible sightings, and that was what you'll probably remember from my last episode of Timbavati, the female leopard who just had cubs, and finding her walking back to her cubs, walking into a rocky area. Unbeknown to me, she had the cub's head in there. She called, she lay in the grass. I thought I could see some movement of the little cubs, and then she suddenly popped out with one of them in her mouth and moved them to a new den site. It was just set the bar for a week that you're going to get to enjoy now. So one thing that might not be as amazing as the quality of the sightings is the quality of the videos, but I do trust that you will enjoy the cell phone footage regardless. So our first drive saw us heading out to the west. Some zebras here too. Because I thought we only had guests for 3 nights and wanted a good chance of seeing lions, the giraffe pride were out in the west. So we made quite a long journey down there, but on the way we found rhinos, we saw buffalo, elephant, hyena, the usual giraffe, zebras, kudus and all of that. And then we got to spend some time with giraffe pride, only a portion of it, but they were slowly getting up and active as the afternoon wore on. And you see in Jack's light, that's where the hyena is there. Or flop down again. It's Murphy's Law, because I travelled quite a distance to see a lion on the first day. We woke up with them roaring close to camp the next morning, and managed to pick up tracks for 2 of the Naru males. You can see some elephants have been through here, leaving their droppings all over the place that are now full of dung beetles that I have to dodge. And these tracks of the Naru males, with the help of some other guides, led us to finding the pride. The pride consisted at that point of all the members, but 2 males and 2 females had paired off for some mating, which was wonderful to see. There's 2 females that are likely to still have cubs again in the near future.
Very jump here.
No, their reaction would be to run away should they feel threatened or nervous. And again, they react to people. The vehicles, not so much. So it's one of the reasons we say not to stand up in cars, because you stand up and you suddenly show that human form, and when he's this close or they're this close, it's a little bit more indecision from them. Are they going to run away or are they going to charge? And they won't attack the car, but they'll give you a mock charge, a warning. So we had a really good line sighting, and then heard that Tumbela had been found wandering around a little north of our position. So we made our way over to see her as she walked around scent marking, but she was some distance from the den site, so she wasn't going to be heading back there anytime soon.
This was amazing. Wow.
Just, some elephants that I'm now bypassing. That afternoon we tried for Tumbela again, but without any joy. Stephen got late, so late in the evening going back to the den site. But by that stage we were already on our way home after having spent some time with the River Pride and the Naru males, and they gave us a wonderful boring display as they proclaimed this piece of land as their own. Next morning we were just bumbling easy when again Stephen, good run luck, he'd radioed to tell us that he had picked up on 2 cheetahs. So we shot down to our southeastern corner and managed to catch up with them. It was 2 brothers, I'm sure the same ones we have been seeing. I know they were picked up last week by Jack out in that same area, and we followed them. They climbed up onto a termite mound for us, paid some interest in parlours, but then they wandered off, and suddenly they came across this collection of feathers on the ground, and they both froze. And we were a bit flabbergasted. We didn't know what was going on until this happened.
It's a leopard.
A leopard has just run out and taken a kill here.
But they took the cheetah's food.
And it's African hawk eagle.
Now this is amazing.
Baby?
Cheetah.
Maybe that's the grounding. You can also, I couldn't hear that. Oh, watch it. The collection of feathers belonged to an eagle, that's an African hawk eagle that a leopard had killed. This leopard came running out, growled at the cheetahs, picked up its prey, and then wandered off. The cheetahs kind of watched it, but then turned and went in another direction. We followed them for a bit longer before they eventually went and settled on one of the sodic sites under a bush. But sadly that was the last we saw of them that week, but it was already the first of our wish list animals that we ticked off. So we had now done the big 5 plus cheetah, and we just needed some wild dogs to close off the big 7 and to satisfy the other achievable wish of my guests. As much as I say we didn't have luck with those cheetahs, I can actually hear on the radio now that Ginger and Civilized have got to see them again in that same area. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll have to include them in this episode. But the afternoon that followed the cheetahs, we did scratch around for them and for some rhinos, just had some nice general game. A lovely afternoon in the bush. With all these wattled starlings flying over with them as well.
Sunday night too.
I know, I found it funny though. I would, if I was an elephant and I just walked around eating all day, I'd do it.
But it was the last morning of my guest day, what should have been my last morning of a guest day, that caused them to extend their stay. They wanted wild dog. We had heard that a pack of wild dogs had come through the area the night before. So we headed off to our southwestern corner to see them, knowing their propensity to run on the tar road. Checked portions of the tar road and had nothing. Luckily there was another vehicle in the area, or another couple of vehicles in the area helping us, and they bumped into one dog. So we rushed up to see this one dog. But being on the tar road was a little bit busy. Dog ran into Glyceris, so we kind of just made our way out the area until we got an update that more dogs had arrived on the scene. And it turned out there were another 31 that had pitched up. By the end of the sighting, the dogs had moved deeper into the Timbavati and gone to settle for the day. Knowing that they'd be around in the afternoon, this prompted my guest to, rather than packing his bags and climbing onto his flight with his kids, to spend another 5 days hoping to spend some more time with the dogs. And to say that they were not disappointed would be an understatement. That afternoon we headed out. They were same place. They got active a little earlier in search of food, but we're having 32 dogs running around. It was just mayhem. They don't. There's no coordinated formation that they run in. They just run everywhere. So they were split. They were running this way, that way. We lost them. We saw them chasing impalas and steenbok, but we lost them. Jack then said, "No, let's drive here. Let's go check this place." Crossed through a riverbed, came up the other side, and what was there? The dogs feeding on a dake. All the pups having first priority on it, the alpha pairing and all the adults giving preference to these little ones, and watched as they fed on this and enjoyed their dake meal before finishing it, or having it finished off by the adults and then running off. It was a very, very special afternoon, but there was more to come. The next morning we headed out hoping to find the dogs again, knowing the area that they'd been left after dark and that they wouldn't move too far. We weren't far from camp when Jack spotted one dog with two hyenas. This lone dog had made a kill. Unfortunately the hyenas had come in and stolen it from him. But we heard that a little further down the road, the rest of the pack were on another impala kill. Turned out there were actually 2 impala kills, but we spent an incredible first half of the morning watching them trying to protect this kill from the hyenas, and the interaction of their dogs and hyenas was just brilliant.
white dog in the back there.
So after a great morning with the dogs, the afternoon we went for dogs. However, we didn't go to the same pack. This week saw the return of our smaller pack of 13 individuals as well, and they were only a couple of kilometers from where we left the big pack. So that afternoon we went and spent it with them. They were resting by a waterhole, but it was a very, very warm day, so they didn't get up to a great deal, but it was still just a privilege to be able to spend yet more time with a different pack of wild dogs. The next morning was a windy and cold one. It wasn't ideal for game conditions, and it showed. We didn't have a particularly exciting morning, but what we did find set us up for a remarkable evening. And that find was some aardvark tracks. Originally, Jack spotted some old aardvark tracks. They weren't fresh, they were from early in the evening. The wind had disturbed them, and he pointed them out. I showed them to the guests to prove that we did have aardvark, but we weren't overly excited. However, 100 meters down the road, Jack turned around with a smile on his face and said, "No, these tracks are fresh. There's a burrow here." He had realized that there were tracks for aardvark leaving the den and coming back, and that if you just tracked them, you'd find the den site. And that's exactly what he did. While we sat and had a cup of coffee, Jack went and found this burrow. He had found all the digging spots, but continued until he found the hole in the riverbank where the aardvark dug into to set up its home for the night. We decided there and then that we'd be coming back in the evening and sit and wait for something to happen. So that afternoon we went out a little later, did come across the old pride lioness from the river pride. She was busy roaring. She had finished her honeymoon and was waiting for her pride to return. So we got to spend some time with her, but left her in favour of getting to this den site without spoiling the chance to see this aardvark. It was a long wait. We ended up spending over 3 hours there, but as you will see from this following series of clips, it was well worth it. Unbelievable. We were speechless. Alex said this was probably one of the most incredible game experiences he had had. To see an aardvark in the low veld is just an absolute treat. you know, they're there. We see their tracks, we see the signs of them. Any big hole in a termite mound would have come from an aardvark, but as this episode taught us, they're leaving their burrows quite late at night, and these are the times we're having dinner or in bed already, so it's why we don't see them. But not taking anything away from the sighting, it was remarkable. So we headed out the next day. Whatever we saw beyond that was a bonus, and we decided to go try for the big pack of wild dogs that Civilized had seen the day before. Picked up their tracks and followed them for quite a while before eventually coming across the 32 of them, mobile down one of our main roads in the western sector, and we spent the morning following them as they ran around. And as always, when you have 32 energetic predators, you're always going to be in for a treat. Fortunately, the dogs settled on that road, and with Alex's sister and brother-in-law arriving in the afternoon, we knew that we had a mission for the afternoon. So they arrived and we decided to kind of head straight down. It was a bit of a drive, far further than I would normally drive on a first drive for some guests, but because they were also equally appreciative of how rare and treasured any wild dog sighting is, we knew that the trip would be worth it. It almost wasn't. By the time we got there, the dogs had got early because they hadn't hunted a great deal in the morning. I think they'd only had one kill. The dogs were mobile, but straight to our very southern boundary. And we literally got there with them about 50-60 meters from it. Fortunately though, the pups went static just on the side of the our side of the boundary. Adults went hunting. We followed some of the adults as they were chasing some impala, but it was a difficult job. So we actually thought, let's go back to the pups. We'd no sooner got to the pups when one of the dogs jumped up. The adult that was babysitting them jumped up, all the pups in tow, sprinting off to the north. We rushed around trying to keep up, but luckily they're quite noisy animals and we could hear them feeding up ahead. We knew that there'd been a kill made, and we managed to relocate them, and then this incredible scene unfolded. It's a few minutes, but it was probably one of the most exciting wild dog sightings I've been privileged to see, especially because of the size of the pack and the interaction and the fact that it was happening literally against our car. So enjoy this scene that we got to witness. Keep movements down to minimum, yeah? Just while it's so close.
No way.
So we pulled away from that, went and had a quiet drink, satisfied that that was our drive. We were going to take a slow drive home, maybe look for some porcupines on the way, but our excitement for the day was done. Everybody had massive smiles on their faces, and we just weren't expecting more. So we were driving down this, or up the Savoca Road back to the north, and suddenly Alex shouts out from the back, "Pangolin." I'm like, "Sorry, what?" He's like, "Pangolin." And as I was looking forward, there in front of us, crossing the road, was a freaking pangolin. We thought the holy grail of safaris was seeing an aardvark, but now the next night we were sitting looking at the most trafficked animal in the world, one of the most difficult to see. Guides, trackers, tourists will do many, many years in the bush and never lay their eyes on one of these. I'd taken me 7 years of guiding before I saw one. Even in this last 6-7 years, I've only seen a half a dozen times. And this was the first time I'd ever bumped into one, actually driven and seen one. Crossing the road at the right time. If we were half a minute earlier or later, we would have missed this thing, but there it was. Went under a bush, came out of the bush, and then walked back across the road, and then went and tucked itself into some cover. We sat and waited for it to come out. It didn't, but we got to have a look at this thing. The kids got to see it. Possibly going to be the only pangolin they ever see in their lives, but it was just, it completed a list. So we're done now. The big 5, cheetah, wild dog to make what we call the big 7, and then adding on the impossible 2, aardvark and pangolin in less than a week with the same guess. I had never in my guiding career, Jack, who's been doing this for almost 3 decades, had never had that run of good fortune, and I can guarantee you that I never will again. It was just an unbelievable run of luck, good fortune, skill, whatever you want to call it, but it happened to me, and I was not disappointed about it for a single second. So we went back, had some drinks, and celebrated. So we went out the next day now fully expecting that we had the luck of the Irish, and an aardwolf was going to pop up, a caracal was going to be catching guinea fowl in front of us, and we went there with such high hopes. We didn't get to see that level of excitement. We saw some buffaloes and elephants. I guess it's what, probably months? 2? That one, oh, probably 6 to 8 months already. Yeah. And when they're newborn and a few months old, they're tiny, tiny, tiny.
That one here's got a lump on it,
Yeah, what is it?
and a bit of a limp. That Eddie's got a lump
I see on the right side.
and limp.
But we just enjoyed a drive in the rain. It had started drizzling. It was just something different. The bush was beautiful and misty and green and full of life. and we realized how lucky we had been and that it couldn't carry on forever. So we took it easy and just enjoyed a chilled morning. The afternoon we wanted leopard. We had tracks for leopard just outside the camp that Jack and Given were trying to follow, but in very rocky terrain, and they were unable to make much headway on that individual. But we still had a beautiful sunset. We got to see a lovely sighting of rhinos, and it was just a pleasant day. There was one more drive left. A lion or leopard would have been great on it, but we didn't expect to leave camp and immediately find 2 leopards up a tree that had been chased there by wild dogs. Wild dogs had moved off, but it was Nialeti and her cub, and this was the scene that greeted us. We then continued to follow them, and we didn't quite understand what had happened, and still can't quite accurately piece it together, but we followed them back to a baby Nyala kill that Nialeti had hoisted up a tree. She'd obviously gone to fetch her son for this kill. Whether they heard the dogs make a kill and went to investigate, or bumped into the dogs on their way back to their own kill, I'm not sure, but regardless, we got to see them on a kill. The boy jumped up, he started feeding, and we left them to it in search of the dogs. Picked up tracks for the dogs. They were running around in circles. While we were looking for them, somebody called in one of the Naru male lines, so we decided to go see him because we weren't far away. Came back. So Jake, you think others have come through here? So Jack's saying he can see tracks for where the others have walked here, and that's the scent he's after.
I was just about to say he's...
So unfortunately we had no luck with the dogs, but we had to head back to camp and pull the curtain down on what was truly a remarkable week. Again, the diversity of things that we saw. We had, as I mentioned, big 5, cheetah, wild dog, aardvark, pangolin. We saw bush babies, different types of antelopes, good interaction between them, rhinos scent marking and patrolling the territories. And not just the big things, the little things. Bird-wise, we had ostriches, a pair of ostriches. We had martial eagle, battledores, vultures waiting for their kills of the wild dogs. Gabbar goshawks being mobbed by fork-tailed drongos. Little Riley was so fascinated about the little things. So dung beetles, we spent time watching them. We got to see 2 snakes that Jack found, a boomslang and a sand snake. Then there were owls at night, the sounds, just everything, the whole package. You could not have asked for a better experience for all of them. And the most incredible thing for me was that this was a group of tourists that fully appreciated how rare and special the moments that we got to share and enjoy were. To put it into perspective, that was the 3rd aardvark that Jack had seen in 27 years of tracking. It was my 4th in the Timbavati in 13 years. These things happen once every few years. So to have that happen and then the next night see a pangolin, there are very, very few people in the world that would have been privileged to that level of luck on a 1-week safari. So I was delighted to be able to drive these guests and share this with them. Some elephants down in the riverbed here. And we decided on Saturday afternoon to just go and chill, have a drink. Got a friend from King's Camp to come join us, and we sat in the Shutton Dam just talking about the week that I'd had, enjoying an afternoon off. And then while we were there, a pack of wild dogs, the 13, decided to come and surprise us. and ended up making a kill about 80 meters away the one side. The rest of the pack killed behind us about 200 meters away, and then the whole pack came running past us. It was while we were sitting in a chair having a gin and tonic. It was just the fitting end to a week that I truly will never forget. And I know that when Alex returns, and he promised he would, he's going to have expectations that will never again be met. But I just hope that you guys can or have enjoyed sharing in a bit of this incredible week that we had. And if you have half that luck on your next safari, you got to know that it's been a good safari. So that's me. I'm back on drive with some more guests this week. I'm keeping my fingers very tightly crossed that the luck continues. It sounds like this morning there have been some cheetah and lions. I've already seen rhino and elephant on this drive. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. So folks, until next time, take care, stay safe, and we will see you very, very soon. Cheerio.